In your own frame, you can then decide and in a way mold your vibration to what you want. This does mean having boundaries, saying no to things you don't want to do, and then saying yes to a vision that you have for something you want to create in your life. What is your environment like? What kind of people do you surround yourself with? Because energy osmosis-wise, you are absorbing the vibe of the people you're around the most. Welcome back to another episode on the Doughty Podcast. Today, we're going to be looking at how your vibration did not start with you. Now, let me first off just share some of these from my own life. I'll share different patterns that have happened. I'll share some also from other people that I know. This can come from culture. Your vibe can actually be influenced by your culture. I have friends that are, may come from the Jewish tradition. They may come from Christianity. They may come from India, and you can definitely see how different cultural energy dynamics have influenced their vibe. And especially for this, the most important thing I think that has influenced my vibe has been, it's for most people, it's your parents. What is your relationship with your parents like? And what dominant emotions did your parents experience that then went into your vibration and how you feel about yourself? Now, also think of vibration as the emotions. There's emotional levels of consciousness, and at certain levels you have that of shame, fear, guilt. You have all these different energies, these different emotions, and from those different emotions are different vibes, different energy, and we all have a dominant vibration. Our dominant vibration is a combination of how we think, feel, and act consistently and how we see ourselves. Now, some of our self-worth, many of us, I think the most common limiting belief that I see in people, and in me in general as well, is a belief of worthiness. Do we feel worthy? What do we think we need to do to feel worthy? And when I look at my own parents, many of you may know my story, but I want to break down a little bit of what I experienced growing up and how that influenced my vibe and how this trickles down through different family generations in a way. Now, on my dad's side, I think that would be the easiest to start with. My dad is still to this day a traditional nice guy, very nice guy, and he is he's a fire investigator, so he's successful at what he does. He takes his job very seriously. I think once again, I think that I take my my career very seriously in the way that I'm very focused on it. And, it takes up a lot of my life, and I have a lot of willpower with that. It's very interesting because so does my dad. My dad also has the same mentality around his work. But the thing with my dad is he is such a nice guy in the sense that, there's a lot of people that I think take advantage of him. And, it's hard for, the hardest thing for a nice guy is to say no and to establish boundaries and to be in their own frame. And having my dad grow up, many of you may know my story, but my parents were together up until I was about 5 years old. My dad and mom divorced then. And I didn't know this at the time, but for my dad, that was a very traumatic experience in the sense that he was madly in love with my mom. And I think maybe part of my mom just wasn't polarized, or, maybe it just wasn't a polarizing relationship because my dad was such a nice guy. But my mom, they also, they got together young, and I think maybe my mom wanted to explore a little bit and see, learn more about herself and stuff like that. But around 3 to 5, when I was about 5, parents divorced. I asked my dad recently, because when you start doing this work and you start realizing that your vibe didn't start with you, you can start questioning your parents if they're around. And if they're not around, you can go in meditation and maybe connect to your inner self and kind of get different information. But I would then ask my dad questions like, how hard was the divorce on you? Because I was young. I don't really remember a lot of this stuff. And sometimes what happens is we shut it out energetically, but energetically or memory-wise too, because maybe it was somewhat traumatic, So my dad, that was really hard on my dad. And my dad was, I think, trying to fix my mom or trying to help my mom, and maybe that depolarized it. My dad has this pattern of being a fixer. He would attract woman that he felt like he could fix. And that was part of his value was based on, if I can add value to you, if I can help you, then you're going to love me more. Then you're going to give me what I want. And my dad said it was very hard on him, and the divorce in general, he didn't want it. but it was something that, was getting brought up. So I think he may have felt rejected in many ways when, I was 5, my younger brother was like 3. And it was something that then 3 years later, my dad met my ex-stepmom. Now, my ex-stepmom is a narcissist to this day. And she is very controlling. And it didn't start off fast like that. Like, it was like little layers where she was kind of nice at first, and then she started getting more and more control. And she saw how far, pretty much my dad just kind of allowed her to like take the reins and do everything. My dad's a fire investigator. He was a firefighter at the time, so he was gone 24 hours a day, back 24 hours a day. And the ex-stepmom is controlling, narcissist. She turned my brother and I against our mom. So we'd go back and forth from our moms to dads. She turned us against our real mom. And anytime we'd come back from our real mom's house, we'd get immediately in trouble. Not allowed to we weren't allowed to have friends. We weren't allowed to watch TV. We had to earn going to school. She became physically and emotionally abusive. And eating, eventually it got to a point to where towards the end of it, we were living in this house that had like a mother-in-law's side of the house, which is like just this room with a little kitchenette. And my brother and I didn't have beds. We had these little like 90s fold-out things. You guys have probably seen them. There's fold-out things, and we slept on those. And every day we just put it back into like the little couch chair thing. And then my brother and I given a bowl of cereal in the morning, TV dinner at night. And if we wanted more food, we'd just sneak to the other side of the house when everyone was at work. But that was our life for a while. So from that, though, the energy pattern was my dad allowed my ex-stepmom to do all of these things and to run the show. Now, what that means is him being a nice guy, he probably didn't want to brush up against the tension of my ex-stepmom. And I find that kind of interesting because that's part of the traits of a nice guy. The nice guy doesn't want to go against tension. The nice guy, it's easier and they feel safer in someone else's frame. Now, if I look to the energy dynamics of my dad's mom, which is my grandma, is I can see that she, in a way, was somewhat overbearing growing up, maybe a little controlling, and kind of dominant in a way because my dad's dad was also a nice guy, and my dad's dad had no frame, so that activated the masculinity within my grandma, and my grandma was kind of like a single mom. And my dad's dad, I think he was also addicted to alcohol. He passed away when I was young. I never met him. But he was like a traditional nice guy. I asked my grandma about this. My grandma's awesome. But she's like an Italian woman that's like, very assertive and loud, just herself, But I can see how her masculine energy is activated, controlling. And then my dad was kind of domesticated in a way. And maybe my dad craved, probably a masculine figure of his dad, who was a nice guy. And my grandma told me that Dave, my dad's dad, he was always at other people's houses doing things for people on the weekends, and it would like take away from family time. My grandma would get pissed off about it. And then once again, oh, that's interesting. My grandma divorced my grandpa when my dad was young, and that was once again very hard on my dad's dad. That's what my dad said. My dad said he did not want the divorce. He tried getting back with my grandma many times, but she kept rejecting him, probably because she didn't feel safe and she had to activate her own masculine energy in order to take care of the kids and stuff. And she became kind of controlling. And then my dad became a people pleaser from that and a nice guy from his dad. So, hey, nice guy, grandpa, nice guy, dad. And then I broke the pattern. That's what I had to do. I had to learn how this didn't start with me. This nice guy thing wasn't my shit. It was my dad's and my grandpa's. And once I became aware of this, I was then able to see that, oh, I want to be validated by people. I then saw that this was a huge shadow. It's manipulative as fuck, too. Think about it. If you're a nice guy and you want people to give you validation, love, and support, you think if I'm nice to you, if I do this for you, then you're going to give me this in exchange. You're going to be nice to me. You're going to love me. You're going to validate me. It's this transactional thing. And once I started becoming aware of how inauthentic this is and how this is like a manipulative tactic to try to get people to think about me in a certain way, I, in a way, became kind of angry at my past self. And I realized what is actually authentic. It's much more authentic to me to be in my own frame. I also realized the nice guy likes to be in other people's frame because it feels safe. Freaky thing. when my dad finally divorced my ex-stepmom, which by the way, my grandma had a big part to do with that. My grandma had to kind of encourage my dad to do that because the frame wasn't as strong. You see what I mean? It's an interesting thing. But yeah, once it was literally like, this is getting so bad, my grandma's like, dude, you don't have a choice. You got to do this or I'm going to do something about it. And it's like, my dad's like, okay, divorce. And even after that, though, I remember, even though my brother and I were completely controlled by the ex-stepmom, there was a part of us that felt safe in that certainty, in that knowing that even though we have to hide sneaking food, we're not allowed to go to school, or we had to earn going to school activities, we're not allowed to have friends, there was like, after the divorce, there was an uncertainty in the air, and it felt kind of scary. It felt kind of unknown. In a way, I think that control was something that I missed, so I created that control in my life. I became super strict on different areas of my life. I ended up becoming a very hard worker, very strong discipline. So in a way, maybe some of that helped me because I wanted to recreate that control, but that control equals fear at the same time. But of course, there are some of the shadow that can help with like becoming successful. You know, somebody can crave significance and validation and become successful. So it can, in a weird, dark way, serve them, but it's not good long term. And when you're unaware of it, you will then keep trying to fill a cup where you always feel unworthy in that void. So my vibration of not feeling worthy, of feeling like I had to be a certain way in order to get love, then had me in depolarized relationship where I was attracting emotionally unavailable women into my life that I could fix. And then what happened though is then I would give up my sense of self, give up my frame in order to save them or in order to, gain their level of approval. Well, guess what? That was my dad's pattern. It was a feeling and a belief in unworthiness that was affecting my vibe. I thought it was my own. And then I was depolarizing relationships, so there wasn't as much sexual polarity. And then that was just a complete shadow that I had to become aware of. But remember, your vibration doesn't start with you. I was then able to clearly see the vibration of that and how that was affecting my life. And I'll be honest with you, for a couple months, I got pretty angry at my past self. I was angry that I allowed myself for so long to get walked on by other people, that I wasn't in my own frame. And I found myself being sucked into similar situations between me and my ex-stepmom, where she was like controlling the frame. I'd find myself manifesting things in my life with people with the same energy archetype. This is a clip from the Daily Vortex Podcast, where I post 2 times a week, and we go really deep on understanding consciousness, understanding how to raise our vibration, how to bring these spiritual concepts down to earth in a relatable and practical way. For the whole entire episode, you can click the link below, but also subscribe to that of the Daily Vortex Podcast on either iTunes or Spotify. That's where there are a backlog of over 100 episodes, plus the whole entire episode length is there. On this channel, you will only be seeing clips moving forward. So if you want the whole episodes, you can click the link below. You can subscribe. They're also very easy to listen to. They're automatically downloaded once you subscribe. Plus, you'll never miss an episode. So this is where most of my intention is and my energy is going these days. And I look forward to bringing you many more amazing episodes. But for the rest of this episode, you can click below and you can subscribe to the Daily Vortex Podcast. And I look forward to helping you expand your consciousness in a very practical and relatable way. So I'll see you on the next episode. And as always, peace, much love, and namaste.